Well, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I am here. My name is Bear Goodman, and I'm an academic advisor with the Pathway Oregon program, and I'm here to talk about the Pathway Oregon program in all its different facets. I will share some visual information with you so that you can have that as well. So let's get that going. So what you should be seeing, hopefully, is the Pathway Oregon Award screen. Pathway Oregon is actually an office in itself that has advisors, but it's also administered by the financial aid program because it is connected to students' financial aid. In essence, what it is it's a tuition guarantee program, which means that it finds a way to make sure that 100% of your tuition and fees are paid for 4 years at the University of Oregon before any loans or personal money. So that's the really exciting part, is students who are part of Pathway can go through 4 years of school without using any of their own funds or loan money to pay their tuition. It gives you 12 terms of eligibility, which is really 4 years within a 5-year window. And the way that that is funded is through a combination of federal financial aid funds, state funds, any U of O grants, and then what are called Pathway Oregon funds themselves. So I'm going to talk just a bit about how the award works for students, and then I'm going to talk about how you can get that award, because that's most people's question. But an example basically is that a student is going to have a certain amount of tuition each term. So you come to school, you register in classes, the university assesses you tuition. We've used an example of a rather arbitrary number of $4,500. The University of Oregon charges per credit, so everybody's tuition kind of varies each term. In order to qualify for Pathway, you do have to qualify for the federal Pell Grant through your FAFSA. So every student does get some Pell Grant. Most students, and this year all students, are getting the State of Oregon Need Grant, or often called the Oregon Opportunity Grant. And then sometimes there are other awards. So we've included 3 just in this example. And so what that really means is what used to happen before Pathway, or what happens to non-Pathway students who are financial aid students, is they have a tuition bill and they get some money from their federal aid, some money from their state aid, maybe something like the tuition waiver that's mentioned. But if you add up those 3 numbers, it adds to 3,012. So typically for most students who are financial aid qualifying students, there's still a tuition gap. And this amount in this example is $1,488, which is the difference between the total tuition and the federal and state funding. So what would happen in this term is Pathway Oregon would pay this student's account $1,488. So Pathway Oregon, unlike a lot of scholarships or funding programs, is not a set amount of money. It's just a guarantee that whatever that gap is for a student, it will get covered to the dollar. So some students will get small amounts of Pathway money because they have less tuition or bigger grant amounts, $100, $200. Other students who have smaller grant amounts and more tuition, for example, students who go to the honors college, their awards will be bigger. So every student just receives the money that they need to cover 100% of their tuition. So the next thing, of course, that people are interested in is how you get the award. It is conferred to students when they apply to the University of Oregon. So you don't have to apply for Pathway. What you do is you just apply to the U of O, and if you're eligible, you'll be given it. There's no limit on the number of Pathway Oregon awards. We typically give out between 600 and 700 a year for incoming classes. The things that you need to do to qualify, the high school part, is have a high school GPA of 3.4 or higher. The 3.4 GPA is at the time of your application to the University of Oregon. So it wouldn't be a predicted at the end of high school GPA. It would be when a student applies in the fall to have a 3.4. It is only for Oregon high school graduates. So if you're graduating from an Oregon high school, you are also eligible. You do have to apply to the U of O by January 15th, which is the priority deadline for application. Be admitted as a first-time freshman, and of course, file a FAFSA and be eligible for the Pell Grant. So the really two big criteria are, or three, I guess, is you apply to the U of O. If you have a 3.4 or higher high school GPA and you're eligible for the Pell Grant, you're guaranteed to get the award. And it will be given to you through the admissions process. You don't have to do anything but have those three pieces of information for the U of O. So that is the way that students qualify. And again, there's no limit on the number of students who get the award. It's just the number of people who apply who qualify. In order to maintain the award throughout your 4 years, you do have to reapply for FAFSA each year to renew it, because again, the basis of it is your eligibility for the federal Pell Grant. And you have to do it by March 1st of each year. There is a GPA requirement once you get in that's connected to financial aid, but it's a 2.0 GPA. So the 3.4 is just what you have to have in high school. Then once you're in, you just have to maintain the standard for financial aid eligibility. Now, most people think about Pathway in terms of the financial award, which is a really big one, but it also does come with a program, which is why I'm here. There are specific Pathway Oregon advisors who meet with Pathway Oregon students. We do all-around comprehensive academic advising, so we'll do long-term academic planning. We also help students with lots of different types of support. We also do budgeting because we're among the only advisors outside the financial aid office who do financial aid advising as well. So we kind of combine financial advising and academic advising in our office. And we work, often students work with us and their major advisors. So sometimes they'll come see their Pathway advisor for one thing, see a major advisor for another thing. It's pretty flexible in that way. One thing that's worth mentioning is that, Pathway Oregon does not cover 100% of the cost of a university education, because you do have to live somewhere, you do need food, and also it does not cover books. So it's just covering tuition and fees, things that come on your U of O bill. So, one of those things is what your housing situation is, plus there are loans available for those items in terms of covering remaining expenses. But it is important to bear in mind that Pathway Oregon doesn't cover the other half of the education, which is the living expense portion and book portion. However, for students who are able to get private scholarships or non-UO scholarships, so that's anything from your high school, your community, nationally, etc., 100% of that money does go to the students to help with living expenses and does not go into the tuition part. So we have students who are getting 100% of their education paid for, including living expenses, because they've gotten a lot of scholarships coming out of high school, because those scholarships will go there. So that's a really great strategy for that. Anyway, that's a pretty brief overview of our program. I'm happy, I know there are probably a lot of questions for both me and Sherry, so we're happy to answer those. Also, if you're curious to learn more about Pathway Oregon, you can always book an appointment with one of us starting in August. We have an email which you can send your questions to. We also have a website, and also financial aid. If you have questions about Pell Grants, etc., the financial aid office is also a good option for students.